Um, I forgot to insert something. Sometimes when I share things, I have an initial point to make, but because the library, the information is like the tree of creation, the all living light tree of creation is so connected. So many other experiences that are interrelated because you're experiencing so much that is happening simultaneously within simulations, within simulations, within simulations, and then translating the difference between what's real and what's not. Or, if you will, what are fake timelines, which are based on artificial light timelines, and the ones that are based on eternity, which is the law of one, which is what love is. Okay. So I was talking in part 3 a couple of videos ago about how when I was a child, because of studying Hollywood film and actors and acting, and then knowing the difference between living your real life is living your story, which means you're not acting. Okay. So in other words, you could pull your own holographic film strip up of your life, and they can do that. Okay. Of everything that you were experiencing throughout your life, except for what eternity is, because they can't pull eternity up. They don't have that much fire to run that film. Okay? So it's like there's some information there, there's not information there, which means it's gone, it's there, it's gone, it's there. Remember, I was like, now you see me, now you don't. Now you see me, now you don't. Wow, there's some that's recorded in memory and some that isn't. Remember what I talked about? No memory and memory? That's a buzzsaw. That's the law of one buzzing through their Borg shit. All the goo codes trying to hold memory wipe and reprogram software. Okay? It's against the law of one. Okay? Start with that. Number 2 is I was aware of it when I was a child about recruiting, okay? Because it was based on, because of where I grew up, which, as I mentioned in the other video, because my parents had made a sufficient enough of money. My mother had a trust fund out of Chase Manhattan Bank, because my grandfather was Charlie Waters, who was the CEO of Simpson, Spence and Young. And if you know who Simpson is, Wallace Simpson, who was married to King Edwards. That's on my grandfather's side of the family through my mother. So my mother didn't need to work. Okay, so my mother was hanging out at country clubs, right, with movie stars and tennis ball players, right, Olympic swimmers like Donna De Verona, or just all those folks out of Hollywood, right? That scene, I call that a scene. You know what the scenery is, right? Like a Hollywood scene, like a Truman Show model set, same stuff. So I realized not only when I was in elementary school, the exams, okay, and I mentioned this before, you already know what they're looking for. So there's a different kind of masking going on here when you're eternal being. You don't want to get recruited. You don't want to knock on the door. You don't want to go to work for these folks because you know what it is that they represent. Right? When you're in Rome, do as the Romans do. So when you're a frequency modulator and you're well briefed. In other words, you're very aware of what's going on. Okay? And you got to be careful what you become aware of and not want to become aware of. And I knew that as a child. But I realized what I call are consciousness traps. So Hollywood is like a consciousness trap in which your energy is going to be used to go to work on behalf of them, which is basically the military, an AI Star Wars gamer. So all that represented really was what we call mass distractions. Hollywood is mass distractions to keep consciousness distracted so it's not focused on using its energy to create anything new. Now they get money out of us that way. Pay for all their movies. Right? They're selling everything. So they get you both ways. Patty Broussard was right about that. They have multiple ways in which to screw you. They get you both ways. So it's like burning a can on both ends. That's precisely correct. That's why they're universe killers. Okay? And so when you put this through the lens of Hollywood, for example, or being recruited into the programs like the CIA, because I had a friend of mine, his name was Frank Barlow. I met Frank Barlow in a psychiatric hospital when I drove my truck into a tree one night trying to kill myself. Okay? And I ended up going across the street to a place that I didn't even know what was there. And there was a guy in the window, only to find out it was a hitman for the CIA. Now, you can tie Gaddafi into that, by the way. Frank is no longer with us. The last time I heard from his sister, who was a nurse in Fayetteville, Arkansas, he was in China. Okay. And so I fully understood why Frank was in there, because Frank was a practicing alcoholic. Right. So you can see how this cycle works of harvesting energy off of souls through running AI Star Wars games. It means everyone's expendable. Anybody that's got a soul left is expendable. Okay, that's the truth of it. So I realized, for example, Bullocks, which happen to be like, it's not a Neiman Marcus, okay, or quite what you might consider Macy's, right? But the average lower income people couldn't afford to pay for clothing what was being sold in Bullock's department store in Santa Ana, California, when the malls were going up, right? So I found out through my mother that they wanted to recruit me to be a male model in one of their catalogs, okay? Because they thought that my physical, how do you put, your proportions, you know, it's just like a mannequin in a window. It's window dressing, just like Mr. Oz, just like Wizard of Oz. That's what they do. They model, right? So what they would do is use me because of what I look like, because when I was 12 years old, I was almost 6 foot, and I weighed about 165 pounds. And because I was in Olympic swimming shape, because I was training, I shouldn't say I was training. I love to swim, love to go in the ocean. You know, the ocean naturally will get you in excellent physical shape with the way that your energy form and flow goes. Means all your muscles, all your tendons, all your nerves, everything is in healthy, pristine condition because you're running on pure energy. So the flow of your energy naturally transmit, if you will, the form in which you present yourself. So that form, to them, they saw as attractive to utilize my energy. Now we're back into human resources, right? Using humanity with souls as resources in which to make money. Now you become an asset used for a U.S. military operation, psych operation. No, you're not going to use me for that. But my mother mentioned that to me because of what you look like, your form and shape. That now becomes a marketing instrument, a marketing sound instrument in color and shape and form. Now we can make money off this kid. See? Put this guy in a modeling magazine. Now you're in a predictive modeling. Now you're into the quantum intelligence mapping system again. I know. So, you know, you're back to Madison Avenue, which is known as Mad Men. If you want, that's another. There's a lot of they are teachers in their own right. There are a lot of little segments I pull out of different parts of all their movies that you could show a child or a 7 or 8, 9-year-old and go bang. All you got to do is look at 1 minute worth of dialogue taking place between an actor, 2 actors, and the landscape. Wow. Now you understand the war that you're in, the landscape, the war landscape, the terrain, the consciousness terrain that you're operating in. And you can see how what they present to us on the movie screen that our consciousness is running, how it works. Because they reveal an awful lot of truth in those lines. And they're in those lines on purpose. And the reason they put those things in those lines is that in their mind, they can try and wash their hands of the fact that now that you've given consent by the fact they've informed you of who they are, that you now become aware of, you don't have a bitch if what you experience in the future as a result of what they did that they were informing you of, what they're going to do to you. Okay? That's called implied consent. Your silence gave them consent to do it, because then they can say, we informed them because it was in our script. We presented the movie. We presented the information in the movie. They thought it's just a movie. It's not real. They went on their way, and they don't realize now they're experiencing something in the future because they had enough time to be able to put together what they were going to do in the future, because these are future architects. Now you begin to experience what they told you in 1930 in a movie, what they were going to do in 1970, and now it's there. Now you're experiencing what was programmed for you to experience because you gave them permission in which to do it. So they're programmers. Yes. Turn the noise off. Change the channel. Right? That's why I told my mom and dad, shut that shit off. Throw it in the dumpster. Right? You realize that's a military operation. The U.S. military has its own psychological operation department that operates under the AI command, which is the machine-coded command. Okay? Cybernetic stuff, cyborgs, super soldiers, all that stuff. Right? So those that still have souls left, led by a living spirit that experience what love is in their heart, I'm speaking to the choir. I acknowledge that. Okay? I also acknowledge that there's going to be very few people that are ever going to be led to the channel on which I reveal all this. Okay? Because their consciousness, and if you will, led by spirit, simply isn't leading you over here to experience this. That's why I recognize that the people that even experience what it is that I share with others are very few. And the ones that do are led there to experience this because they're being led by their soul and their spirit to experience that. Or, in the other way in which this works, it means that on the other side, it's like saying that those that aren't with the law of one, which means they don't honor the law of one because they're living the law of one, experiencing what love is, and that's the inner they share with others because that's what the law is, okay, can learn through me what it is I become aware of, they become aware of. Now they're aware of something they weren't aware of before because they're on the battlefield. Okay, which means they represent the other side or an interested party, right? That now becomes aware of what I become aware of it at the moment in which they become aware of it, as it relates to no time and time, or the speed differential between the two, right?